This episode on Beers in the Shed, we're looking at some DIY mods you can do over the Chrissy holidays in your shed at home for under $200, as well as some free 5-minute mods you can tackle as well.
Definitely a sub $200 mod that's obviously going to make your car more capable on the track and prolong your suspension life.
I would not have a winch in the front of my vehicle without a motor breather, mate. Then we're going to be going through our best wins, fails and laughs of 2024. Clothes bag went underwater, the swag, everything.
One of my most memorable camps from last year was in the middle of the Cape.
One of the wildest bush mechanic fixes I've probably done my whole life with you.
Let's get into it. Jesse, you there, mate?
Yeah, I'm here, Jock, eh?
Mate, we've got some epic stuff to get through, so let's crack one of these. Oh, beautiful. It's ice cold. It's a scorcher in the shed, mate, so I'm going to need cold 4S to get me through it. Let's get straight into it, eh? Now, Jesse, mate, something that you and I are very well versed in, it's having a crack yourself in the shed at home. Pretty much how we built our cars, eh?
And how we still build them these days too.
And the best part about it is even whether you've got all the skills, all the tools, or you don't have a lot of knowledge or time or skills, you can still have a crack yourself at home and make some things that you're darn proud of that'll help you out in the bush, mate. And what we've done, we've shortlisted a couple of our favourite mods, mate. My top 5 picks are ones that I've done recently to my vehicle, just on some Sunday arvos or on the weekend. But we also asked you guys at home on social media what some of your favourite mods are. And we're going to be going through them because there's some absolute crackers you guys have done to your rigs at home. A couple of picks that we got out of them, Jesse, and I even got a few ideas for some of my vehicles as well, mate.
Oh, there was some rippers sent in, that's for sure. And like you said, the best part is, even if you don't have an idea, a lot of these mods are cheap and they're probably even stuff you got laying around the house. Have a crack on the weekend, have a go, and if it doesn't pan out the first time, at least you learn something.
Here are my 5 top DIYs. These are all ones I've done to my vehicle recently and I'm pretty happy with them. So this is one of my favorite mods I've done recently. It's just making use of dead space really well and I'm happy with it. It was my idea that I came up with and I reckon it's brilliant. And what I call it is the condiments rack, mate. It's basically an oil storage rack. I've done it in the Pony and on my Sasslux. Making use of space that's kind of awkward. Super simple. All it is just a bit of flat bar that's folded or tigged up. And then in the case of my Sasslux, I've pop riveted it to the inside of the headboard. And in there, I can store a litre of oil, a litre of power steering fluid, some Brunox, some engine oil, and even other bits of, and coolant as well is the other one. So I've got, 5 litres of different fluids that are stored out of the way. Now, the way I've done it with my Sasslux is the height of the headboard fits perfectly with a 1 litre Castrol bottle of oil, so it kind of holds it in place.
Yeah, now, perfect.
With that mod, it means that I can only pull 1 bottle out at a time. That is a bit of a design consideration, but my thinking was, mate, for how often I'd need to grab a litre bottle of oil to top something up. I'm not really going to be in a rush. I didn't think it was the end of the world if I need to get to the coolant and it's the 3rd bottle down, just to pull the other 2 bottles out first. I didn't think that was a big issue, and I thought it was worth the sacrifice for the space saving of being able to put 5 litres of fluid there out of the way in otherwise wasted space.
Oh, definitely, yeah. You're not in a race, and like you said, if you're getting oils out or something to do a job, chances are you've got some other tools out. So using space that's awkward that you can't put a box or something in, it's just awesome to jam those sorts of things in that you don't need all the time.
Exactly. It's one of my favourite things about everyone's different four-wheel drive. They find these little nooks and crannies they can make use of otherwise wasted space. I love seeing that. And if you haven't noticed already, I stole that idea off Jesse, but it's a great idea. Make a condiments rack in your four-wheel drive and make sure you say thanks to Jesse Gleason for coming up with the idea.
The first one I'm going to talk about is, I actually got this off Sean. So hats off to Sean for this idea. And it's super simple. If you've got a wagon with drawers in the back and they've got carpet on them, or older car like my GQ, it's got some, fabric on the doors. What I do is just get things that you always sort of need when you're four-wheel driving and camping, stick a bit of Velcro on them, so you can just stick them to your door card or the back of your drawers and they don't bounce around. Things like, like a lighter, or I've got a Stanley knife there, I've got a torch on one of them, and you just stick them in your door card or on the back drawers and they can't bounce out of any pockets. And it's just handy to have those things ready to go. And they're super cheap. Like, what's a bit of double-sided sticky Velcro? You go to Spotlight, or you probably, if your missus is into sewing or you still live at home, your mum's probably got some laying around. Pinch that, take it out of the car, and anything you normally use and you want to be quickly to get to, stick it on that, and happy days. Makes it super easy to grab.
It's actually so handy, mate. And the other real funny thing is if your mate always puts his lighter back in the same spot because it's on Velcro on the back of his drawers on the left-hand side, you can pull it off and put it somewhere else and see if he can find it. It's very funny. And I always do it to Sean Whale, and he loves it every time. Always gets a laugh.
Oh, Sean loves it when you go into his car and move all his stuff around, doesn't he?
Yeah, he really does. Very funny. Now, this is one I've done recently, and it was cheap. I reckon this has probably cost me $30 in materials.
Yeah.
One of the things with my SAS Hilux, and every four-wheel drive needs mud flaps. And, they've got to be a certain distance off the ground. They've got to be a certain width to cover your tyres. They've got to be on for when you're driving on the road. But for me, I'd always want to take them off when I go off-road, and that has always been annoying, as I'm sure it has been for a lot of you guys at home. Now, there's lots of different methods to do it. You can have what Jesse has is a bit of SHS that, slots into a little bracket. Some people use airline fittings with a mount for the mud flap, and you can just clip it on like a quick hose coupling, nice and quick on the chassis. There's lots of different ways to have quick release mud flaps. What I've decided to do now, this is a trial, and so far it's working. Long term, we'll see, but basically, Jesse, you know that awning sail track you get so you can add like awning walls and stuff?
Yeah, I remember you telling me this idea in the last trip. So you've actually done it now and it worked out?
Yeah, it worked really well. So basically my mud flap is bolted to that awning sail track, and then I've bolted the track that it runs on to the bottom of my mud guard. And when I go off-road, I literally just pull it out, put it in the back of the tray, and then when I put it back on, slide it back in, and there's just a little, at the moment it's a split pin. I want to change it to an R-clip or something like that to get it to sit in place. It works really well. It does mean the mud flap's a little bit more floppy on the road, but those have been on for about a year now. They haven't fallen off, and I went and did some wheeling with a couple of mates not too long ago, and it was the first test. Slid them off in the back of the tray, and they're out of the way, put them back on, and they weren't damaged or anything, and I could drive home. So, it's a mod I wasn't sure would work, but it's worked so far, and I'm pretty happy with it. So it's one of the good things, as we were saying before, mate, about DIY mods. You can trial and error and see what works and what doesn't for you. And so far, my sail track mud flaps are working.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's a super cheap mod. And as you said, there's many different ways to do it. I took a couple of goes to get them right on my junker. But obviously, once you start quarter chopping cars, putting rear bars on them, in your case, you've got tube guards, bigger tyres, you need a big mud flap. And I've found if you keep your wheels covered with the big flares and big mud flaps, the fellas in the red and blue kind of leave you alone on the road. So it's a cheap mod to do. And if you have the big long ones that are compliant and you're doing hard stuff, you always rip them off. So it's super handy when you're letting down your tyres and lock the hubs in. If you can pull the mud flaps off. Little thing too, if you're going somewhere to air down your tyres and there's mud on the way, pull your mud flaps off before if you've got a wagon. Because many times before, I've got there to pull my mud flaps off and they're full of mud and I've got to put them in the back of my wagon. But that is awesome. Yeah. That's an awesome mod. Another super easy one to do, and most four-wheel drives do come with these things, but you can also make them better or longer, just out of harm's way, is diff and transmission breathers. Now, these things, super easy to do, definitely well under $200 mod. We actually put some of these on the Suzuki on our way to Victoria. Just in the car park, bought the materials, whacked them in, zip tied them up out of the way, bit of hose, bit of an air filter in the end so dirt and stuff couldn't get in. And if you do this right, it could save you thousands of dollars in damage and just, a sub $200 mod in an afternoon in your driveway or shed.
Works so well, mate, and it's essential. And as you said there, not just your diffs, make sure you do your gearbox or transmission as well. Particularly like in some modern cars, mate, the transmission is probably one of the most expensive things in the powertrain. It's cheap insurance just to run a diff breather up, particularly, with autos. You get any water in there, they're going. So, really, really important mod, and it costs, $50, if that?
Yeah, if that.
And to do, it'd probably take you an hour to do your diffs and transfer and transmission, and away you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, your fuel tank too.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, that caught us out in Cape. Yeah, extend the fuel tank one. And a lot of people, you mightn't be that mechanically minded. You think, how do I do this? Normally on top of your diff or on top of your gearbox, there'll be a little stub, and sometimes on cars it's a stub coming out with a cover on it. You pull the cover off, you get the right size tube, run the tube up with some zip ties and put a filter on the end as high as you can, and that's your diff breather's extended. And as you said, an old manual gearbox, if that gets water, and I've had water in my GQ1 plenty of times from obviously going too deep above the breather, and that's fine, but these new modern autos like I've got in the GU, if that gets water in it, that is dead and that's expensive. So it's very cheap insurance to make sure you're going to get home from your trip and save a lot of money on repairs.
This is the most recent mod I've done, and I actually got this idea from a build that Pinnacle did to one of their customers' 79s, and they put some lights in the under tray toolboxes that are just on basically a momentary switch, like a compression momentary switch. So when you open the door, the LED lights turn on straight away in the under tray toolbox. When you shut them, they turn off. Super handy. It's it's a real nice thing to have. It was probably cost me, I think, $9 for two momentary, or $9 each for two momentary switches, so under $20. And I already had the LED lights from the canopy that I wasn't using anymore, a couple of spares, so I just put them up in the toolbox and wired them up onto a momentary switch. And now whenever I need to get stuff out of my under tray toolboxes at night, I can see what I'm doing. It was a quick little thing that helped.
This is another super simple one you can do in your driveway. If your driveway's on a hill, maybe find somewhere flat to do it. Or in your shed, somewhere flat, you got a jack, you got some jack stands. Is bump stops that are spaced right. So a lot of you guys, you're probably putting a lift in your car, and that shock is obviously longer. It's probably not going to compress as much, or you're putting bigger tires on, and they're going to compress up on your standard bump and want to rub on stuff. So nothing worse than going wheeling with your mates, especially if they don't have diff locks, and if they've got this big lift kit and they've got big tires and they're just jamming in the guard and acting like a handbrake. Super simple mod to do. If you can, jack your car up, take your springs out, or even you can do it off measurements. So your bump stop hits before the tire hits any guard or before your shock bottoms out. Because if you're using your shock as a bump stop, it's not going to last that long. For patrols, there is kits you can buy, or you can make spaces out of bits of tube. Any sort of vehicle, you can space it up on plate. There's spaces around, or you can, suss them out and make some yourself. Definitely a sub $200 mod that's obviously going to make your car more capable on the track and prolong your suspension life.
It's a really good one, mate. It's often overlooked because, like I've done it on the Pony. I took some bump stops out of an 80 series and mounted them on the back there just to stop the tyres scrubbing in the guard there with the bigger tyres. It's an essential thing to do that's often overlooked because, I guess a lot of people, they want to fit bigger tyres to get more under diff clearance. It's one thing to have the tyres fit at ride height when you're driving down the road. It's another thing to have them at full compression of suspension with full lock of your steering in the front and in the rear, making sure it's not rubbing on guards and things. That's another thing entirely. So the way, as you said, you can make sure it does is by extending your bump stops. And as you said, mate, cheap as chips, easy to do. A common thing, and it's a real good one, putting a retractable hose reel in for your compressor so you can spool the line out, air up, and then spool it back in again. Lots of people have done it. I know you've done it, had it in the N70, worked great. For under $100, it probably took about 15 minutes to install. I bolted it to the canopy and just plumbed it into my compressor, and away I went. It was me.
Super easy, like no more tangles of your hose. And how annoying is a tangled hose when it's all muddy in the ground? You reel it in, you reel it out, and you can make them use of dead space. I remember the N70 had it right at the front behind the fridge, and you couldn't fit anything there, but that hoser was perfect for it. So it's good use of dead space, which is awesome. Another one, these aren't sort of mods as such. They're just sort of things to check, I guess. But I had to get my thinking cap on. But these are definitely things you can do that will save you money in the long run, is checking your snorkel is sealed. So the best way to do this is get a rag or your hand, depending on how big your snorkel is. Have your car on, have your bonnet up so you can look in there if you've got any rubber pipes. Stick your hand over the snorkel. If you've got a ram head, you normally have to take that off. And just see if you can stall the engine or get those pipes to suck right in and fully pull the engine revs down. Some cars with factory snorkels, you can put your hand on the snorkel and the car will still run. It's obviously sucking air elsewhere. I know on TB48 GU Patrols, they've got this big horseshoe plastic and it's held on with just some rubber springs. They are terrible. Definitely a sub $200 mod, maybe $100 in silicone fitting, some hose clamps. You sort of pipe it correctly, bit of steel pipe in the middle, and then you can stick your hand in the snorkel and it will stall. Because if you get stuck in a mud puddle or a creek and your snorkel isn't sealed, you could suck in water, hydraulic your engine, and you're up for a very expensive bill on engine repairs and a very expensive bill on a tow home if you can't get it running again.
Real cheap and easy mod to do, mate. And I reckon if the young couple that we met in Cape York and the Frenchmans are watching, I reckon that's probably one of the first things they did to the Hilux when they got it back to Cairns after that. That obviously that snorkel, the inlet pipe had a big hole in it. He drove into some water, filled the airbox with water, it sucked it in, went through the turbo, intercooler and into the inlet. Didn't wreck his engine purely because it stalled before it did some damage. I can't imagine it would have been good for the engine, but he got away with it. I reckon a lot of people have hydro-locked their engine purely from a snorkel not being sealed. It's an easy mistake. Of course, every four-wheel drive needs a winch. You can get one for your four-wheel drive for next to nothing these days. Cheap insurance to throw in the front of your vehicle. And, of course, the biggest killer of a winch is not maintaining it. So Learning how to service it and put it together is essential. I like to service my winch once a year. And mate, in that time, there's a couple of mods you can do to your winch if you pull it out to do a bit of a service. That being fitting a breather to the motor and also chucking some in-cab controls in. I reckon 2 essential things you can do whilst you're servicing your winch. A lot of winches these days are coming out with breathers ready to go, but if yours doesn't have one, it's real easy to drill and tap a fitting onto your motor and then put a little bit of breather tube in. Think of it exactly the same as a diff breather. It'll just help with any moisture and condensation in there as the winch heats up and cools down, helps prolong the life of your seals. I reckon I would not have a winch in the front of my vehicle without a motor breather, mate.
This is another super cheap one, definitely sub $200 mods, and especially if you've got a wagon or even a ute, is tight end points to specifically suit your camping gear. So in a wagon, you know, if you got a bit of a transport stage and you're going a bit faster on some of these fire roads to get to the tracks, even if you're on a track on big angles and you haven't got stuff tied down in the back, you haven't got drawers or you've got camping gear on top of your drawers, stuff goes everywhere. So in both my wagons, I've got, you know, I put my camping gear and put my swag, my stretcher in my chair, and I just, either side, I make sure I've got a couple of tight end points. The chair and stretcher's only Alki strap, but it's enough to stop it rolling around. And if you got, you know, a wagon, it can prevent damaging your trims inside, or if you got a canopy, it can prevent, you know, I think we've had people on a trip before, stuff's moved in the canopy and jammed the lock. So just things like that. Super simple mod. Go down to a hardware store, get some screws, get some tight end points, and get some straps. Put all your stuff in the car and just make sure you can strap it down and secure it. That's another super simple one. Doesn't sound like much of a mod and very helpful, but definitely is when you get on the bigger angles, even if you're in the car, you know, going up a big hill and stuff, knowing things not going to fly around and damage the inside of your car, I think it is a good and easy one to do over the Chrissy break. This one is from my mates at Marta, and they know how to put together a good prize package. This has got a 300 series and a massive caravan. Anyway, let's throw over to Sean and he can tell us all about it and how to enter.
Why wait 12 months for a brand new Land Cruiser GR Sport when you could win this one right here? This Toyota Land Cruiser GR Sport is going to be one of the best four-wheel drives on the market right now. 700 Newton meters of torque, twin lock, and it's ready to be set up exactly how you like it. And you'll be able to camp just about anywhere with this on-the-move Trax off-road caravan. With independent suspension, it's got 200 amps of lithium power as well as 400 watts of solar on the roof. And once you step inside, you'll forget you're even off-grid. Check this out. It's got a queen-size bed, north-south facing, a fridge just like you'd have at home, huge bunk beds that you can fit a full-size adult, and believe it or not, there's actually a washing machine inside here. And what if I told you it also comes with $120,000 of cashable gold bullion, bringing the total prize package to $409,000. It could all be yours for just 30 bucks. You could win your great escape with Marta Cars for Cancer's latest lottery. Head to carsforcancer.com.au. Get in quick though, entries close January 13, unless they're sold out beforehand. Good luck.
We also put the call out on Facebook asking what you guys at home had done to your four-wheel drives recently for under 200 bucks that didn't take too long to do, or a mod you're proud of, and we got some awesome answers. You guys are real creative when it comes to making your four drives your own, and I reckon I definitely got a few ideas, mate. There's a couple here that we'd like to share, and there's one straight off the bat. The reason I like this one so much is because I probably will do this to my disco. This one's from Sam King, and he marine carpeted the rear door, and then it's a good spot to mount accessories. So he's got an axe and a little shovel and other bits and pieces that are mounted there. Nice, easy mod to do. You know, you can also add a drop-down table on a rear barn door like that. That's really, really common on wagons. But Sam King, love your work, mate, and I reckon I'm probably going to steal that idea for the disco.
Yeah, that is a super cool idea. I reckon I might want like a little bit of a strap or something over that hatchet though. You know, I know Velcro is good, but you wouldn't want that flying off in the back of your head, would you?
True, yeah, probably something to tie it down. Maybe I'll do that for the disco, but if he's got a cargo barrier, then happy days.
I'm just thinking the way you drive that car, there's a high chance that hatchet could end from the back door through the windscreen. And if you got windscreen covering your insurance, that's all good, Jocko. Just do that.
Well, the problem is that car has so much power, mate. I can't help it.
Land Rover power. That one is a full Land Rover. Another cool one I thought. So I'm not really a roof rack guy or awning guy, as you know, but you know I've got them on the GU and I like to keep stuff sort of slim as possible because it is a bit of soccer mum's car. I've got to go through car parks. Our mate Leroy Costa has got a solar panel mounted under his roof rack on runners. So when he gets to camp, he can pull it out and it gets full sun. Now, I reckon that is a super cool idea, and I'll probably steal that for the GU if I've ever put a solar panel on there, I reckon.
Yeah, that's perfect. That works so well, and it means when you park up a camp, you can pull the solar panel out and get some full sun and tuck it away and still make full use of your roof rack. That is brilliant. I really, really like it. Mate, speaking of making use of things you've got, Scotty Daniels has done a cracker of a 12-volt setup. Now, electrical boards like this are commonplace. You can buy them pretty much anywhere, but the reason I like Scotty's one is because he's made it with some leftover shed parts, and as he said, a couple of cheap spray cans to paint it all up, and I reckon he's done a cracker of a job. He's just used what he's had left over and made it nice and tidy, easy to access. He's got some charging points, some switches, chargers, circuit breakers, everything you need. It just goes to show that you don't need to, with 12-volt in particular, spend tens of thousands of dollars for a lithium thing that scratches your back and makes coffees and things. You can make a setup like this with bits and pieces you got from your shed that will do everything you need for when you go away. So Scotty, that's an awesome 12-volt setup, mate.
Yeah, 100%. And my GU is definitely something to go by there. Before Cape, I didn't have time to do a dual battery setup. I pulled the dual battery solenoid out of my wife's car, just a voltage sensitive one. It's got 2 Anderson plugs on it, and I've got just a AGM battery in the back, and it works fine. I've done a big trip up to Cape. I've done a big trip to Tassie. It works sweet the whole time. It's not the flash to set up, but it runs a fridge, runs some lights, and it works. And it's just out of stuff I had in the shed. It cost me $0, that one.
It's all you need. It's all you need. Now, I reckon there's another one here from Shane Jenkins. I like this one because he's found use of dead space next to, I'd imagine, some drawers or a fridge. It's a perfect spot for a jerry can. And you don't need to do some mega water tank setup. He's just chucked a jerry can in there, works mint, keep it simple. And that's just, like making use of space as we were talking about before. Obviously, it's not the most intricate DIY mod you can ever do, but whacking a jerry can in there for when you go away and taking it out when you're done.
Yeah, mate, super good use of space. I run that setup in both my cars. You've probably seen the False 4 I put in the back of my GQ or GU on a trip. Put a jerry can in there with a little bit of hose, and if you've got water accessible, it is super easy. I know in Tassie, Sean was coming using my jerry can a few times to wash his hands. And the good thing I found on a big trip, obviously, if you've got a water tank, you do carry a hose, but you can't always get to a tap or something. With your jerry can, if you're at a nice Crystal Creek, you can take it out of your car, go and dunk it under the creek, and fill it up anywhere, anytime. It is super easy. Speaking of using wasted space, our mate Matthew Wiley here has made a gas bottle holder on the back of his jerry can holder, so the dead space between the jerry cans and the door, and I love it. He reckons when he used a bit of flat bar and some latches from Bunnings, and he's used the dead space, the gas bottles aren't bouncing around in the car, and it's just super cheap, awesome mod you can do at home.
Yeah, mate, so easy, so simple, and yeah, makes use of that dead space. We'll keep going on about it, but there's lots of DIYs you can do. Spend a bit of time with your full drive and a cold beer and figure out different ways to put things in different spots. It's seriously one of the best things about owning a full drive and tinkering with it to make it your own. Speaking of which, mate, Josh Allen has done a cracker of a setup. Now, as you know, you can never have enough table space when you're out in the bush, when you're cooking and stuff like that, something I kind of suck at. But in any case, what Josh has done is he's done a bit of an L shape. Now, this bit of plywood slides back into his drawers, so it tucks away, but when it pulls out, he can have an L-shaped kitchen. He's still got the tailgate for the back of his ute. He reckons $70 in some timber, and away he goes. Now, you can accessorize that later. He's just got it as a flat bench top, but you could add induction if you wanted to go down that path or whatever. You can never have enough table space at camp, and that's a great way to make a nice kitchen setup for when you're camping.
Yeah, that's super handy. I feel like I've seen that somewhere else on a trip too. It's just something super simple. You're like, I need more space, and you just twist it and put it under his drawer, and it's not taking up any space when it's together. Another one here I reckon is super handy is from a mate, Guy Mahoney. He's built his own tilting fridge slide with scrap metal and purlin bolts and Commodore bonnet struts. That sounds like something would come out of my shed. You've got parts in the shed, you want to make something, you piece them all together. It looks like it's in the back of a ute, so it might have been high to get to. Now, him and his missus can reach in there. Super easy. Good job, mate. I love how you've used everything secondhand out of the shed.
That is the spirit of proper DIY, using what you've got in the shed to make something you've got even better for you. Perfect, mate. Guy Mahoney, that's an awesome mod. I like it. Mate, there have been some cracking DIYs there, and hopefully we've given you guys at home a few ideas of jobs you can tackle on your four-wheel drive over the Chrissy break for under $200. Some of those were even free with stuff you got lying around in the shed. So get out there, get creative, and let us know what was your favorite DIY job that you've done. Chuck it in the comments below for 2 reasons. 1, we really want to hear about them. And 2, I need some more ideas for Chrissy holiday DIY mods that I want to do. And I want to hear from you guys. I'm sure Jesse does as well. So chuck them down in the comments below.
Rightio, Jocko. I haven't asked the big dogs about this, but I reckon there's some really cool DIY mods here. How about we give them a $50 snatch voucher for the best one? Now, I've got one in mind, and I reckon you might have the same one in mind too. This fella has used everything out of his shed. He probably hasn't even gone to the shops to make this. Which one do you reckon I'm going to choose?
Mate, I reckon it's got to be Guy Mahoney with his tilting fridge slide using Commodore gas struts. That is brilliant. That is textbook DIY. And, mate, I reckon he's got himself a $50 Snatch voucher. Love it.
Yeah, he has earned that. He spent half a day in the shed finding them parts and probably only a couple of hours making it, and well-earned $50 Snatch voucher there, mate. Love your work.
Jesse, mate, before we move on, we've got a cracker of a deal from our mates at Raptor that we need to tell you about. Right now, from the 25th to the 27th of December, you can get 25% off the entire Raptor range at Repco. So whether you're tackling a small project like touching up your bar work or a big one over the Chrissy break like painting your whole four-wheel drive, now is the time to save heaps of money, get yourself some Raptor products, 25% off everything. Jump on it and by going to a Repco store. Jesse, mate, that is a cracker of a deal. And I reckon now it's time to move on to our best moments of 2024.
Well, Jock, it is pretty crazy to think that the year is over and we've definitely had some wild trips and some wild moments. Let's take a second to talk about a few things. First up, what do you reckon our biggest fail of the year was? Whether it be me, you, or even the old fellas. What do you reckon the biggest one of the year could have been?
When you sunk the Zook in a river in the high country and got everything so wet, even your clothes bag went underwater and your swag, everything. There was water up over the seat. I reckon that's probably got to be one of the biggest fails I've seen this year.
Yeah, I do remember that, and a lot of people thought that was staged. It wasn't. If you watch the video and keep pausing or even slow motion or something, I'm driving through, I'm a little bit offline, but there's a rock and it just rolls under the front diff of the car and sort of spat me off the track, and that was me. I was stuck. I wasn't prepared. My clothes bag went under. That shows how unprepared I was, and it was a bit of a debacle to get the Zook going, but Clifford did live again after that.
Yeah, he did after we thought we nearly hydro-locked the engine, but fortunately we were able to clear everything out, dry the air filter with some tools, and away we went.
Yeah, and you said I've had a few good fails this year, and I definitely have. One of them, I remember, you bought a nice red Hilux in America, and I got a passport and went over there to drive it, and I was just being silly on a bonus line, and I rolled it over.
I don't know how I feel about that one still, mate. That was a beautiful car, the Red Lobster, and I didn't put a mark on it in the time I had it for a couple of weeks doing some snow wheeling. Give it to you, 3 days after I handed it over, you rolled it. Good bloke.
Yeah, I feel like there's method to my madness here. Clifford the Zook was pretty mint after the high country. No panel damage. It was all good. And I believe you took him on a trip early in the year. Now, I'm not going to call it a fail. This is just what happens when Jock drives cars. There wasn't a straight panel left on it after Jock was finished. And that was my Zook. So
in my defense, we need to blame Sean for that one because all those dents happened when he was towing me.
I can't hear you, mate. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is me rolling the Hilux was just a bit of getting Jock back for wrecking my little red Zook. So I wrecked his red Hilux.
Big time. Now, mate, I reckon this is probably my favourite bush mechanic fix of the year, purely because we've never done it before. A clutch in the bush in the Zook. Now, if you're going to pick a vehicle to change a clutch on, it's Suzuki Sierra is about as good as you'll get. That gearbox weighs as much as a transfer case probably out of a Hilux, to be honest. They're not that heavy. I remember it was pretty funny because we put it on the tyres, as you know, mate. When we dropped the gearbox, I got under to help you. And it's like, ready? 1, 2, 3. We got the gearbox off and it was like, oh, actually, this is okay. And just brought it down.
We actually did 2 clutches on that trip. We did the one in the big GU camera car. And our boss said to us on the phone, I don't know if you remember this, can you boys just change that one in the bush? Now, a patrol box is definitely not something we could have done in the bush. We would have needed some sort of engine crane or a hoist or something to get it in and out, maybe some trolley jacks, but we didn't even attack that job. It's totally on the different end of the spectrum compared to the Zook clutch.
Now, mate, if there's one thing that I love travelling with our good mate Sean for, and I'm sure you do as well, it's his cooking. He always has some fantastic meals. Now, this year we had some crackers. One that springs to mind for me, mate, was playing chili roulette with some skewers we made down in Yarwell, and I stitched Joshy up from TC Boxes real good. We were making skewers with some chicken and capsicum and bits and pieces, but the capsicum was real nice. I actually substituted out capsicum on one of the skewers for a ghost chili, and we went and cooked it, and then I gave Josh the one with the ghost chili because he told me a few days before that he can't handle chili and he has to go see a man about a dog a lot when he eats chili, as some people do. So watch the scene. You see me keep watching Josh as he's eating. He bites that ghost chili almost whole and then keeps chowing down, and I keep watching. I start wetting myself laughing. And Sean actually got a bit annoyed at me because I wrecked his take. He turned around and he's like, what are you doing? And then just as I was about to explain, because I was finding it so hard to talk, I was laughing so much, Josh then went, ooh, that's a bit hot. and then realized what he had eaten, and the whole plot had unraveled. Probably a bit. he had dribble coming out. His nose was running. He was sweating. I felt a bit bad, but it was very funny. It was very funny. He took it like a champion because that's the thing. He said he loves chili. It just doesn't agree with him. So I thought I'd stitch him up. Now let's move on to the best full send, mate. Now this one is a hill in Tassie that we went and explored. Now our good mate Timmy, he took us to a hill that he, as far as I'm aware, had never driven up before. So we decided we'd give it a crack. I was in the car with Sean because, fun fact, this was on my birthday, and the pony decided as a nice birthday present to do a timing belt, and that was really fun. So for that last challenge, I was in the car with Sean. He drove up, his awning hit a tree, and it hit it in such a way that it just perfectly deleted off his car and fell down. No damage, just went pop and came off, and he kept driving. Yeah. And then Tony went up and absolutely sent it in the big GQ, and he pretty much put it on its side at the top of the hill, but then saved it. It was just one of those like, what's going on moments. It was probably the best full send I've seen of the year was Tony sending it up in the big GQ and nearly binning it. Worth it. Yeah, that's pretty wild. Probably the only other full sends I can think of is there was definitely some good ones in the disco at Coffs, and any time I've been in that Zook, now it's got a locker, it's a bit better, but on that high country trip where we did the clutch, there was definitely some full sends. And also on the Coffs trip, there was some full sends. I mean, one of the tracks damaged a lot of the vehicles, and I renamed it to Zook track because the Zook drove the whole thing. In the bottom section, it was on 2 wheels a lot of the time going up there. There was some definitely full send in that. Now, one thing I feel super lucky for in this job is some of the campsites we get to go to. When I went to America, it was my first time overseas, and sort of what I remembered in some of these campsites, what it reminded me of was the Cars movie. You know, the backgrounds when, they're driving into Radiator Springs and stuff, there's big mountains and everything. It literally looked like there was a sheet hanging up with a painting on it at the back of our campsite. And I sort of just kept walking with a stick trying to poke, but there was no sheet there. It was actually the view. It blew my mind going over there and seeing some of that stuff. Some of those camps, they weren't even supposed to be specky. We're on the side of the track for some of them, and they were just unreal, mind-blowing stuff. Big time, big time. Now, mate, we've got one more section that I'd love to cover off with you, and that is our best/sketchiest river crossing. Now, for some reason, there is 2 that spring to mind. Firstly was me trying to drive the Parenti into Stones Crossing there on the Wenlock River and backing out of it and that was losing all my stuff down the river. That was one. And I, to be honest, going into that, I was thinking, I don't think we're going to cross this. I'm going to try anyway, get to a certain point that I can back out from. And, we set up the recovery gear. We had a plan and we backed out of it. Now, the second one, a few weeks later, was the Mighty Pasco. Now, we did get across that, and it was, as we say in the video, on the limits. Probably one of the sketchiest things we've ever done, mate. We thought about it long and hard before we did it, and we got away with it from some, fine planning and making sure we were safe and everyone was on board. But it was probably one of the sketchiest things we've ever done. Yeah, that crossing is something I will never forget. At one stage, I thought I was totally gone. Obviously, I floated a long way in the GU and hit a big rock, which saved me. And I remember saying to you as I got to the other side, I've never been so happy to be stuck in mud before. Obviously, once we were across, we worked out, the dangers in it and changed our plan a little bit and started towing the cars. So when they floated, they didn't float down as much as I did. And it was like a well-oiled machine by the end of it. Everyone got across and everyone was safe. And it almost felt like a bit of a celebration that night at camp. It was such a sense of achievement, Probably took us 3-4 hours to cross that river. Got everyone across safe, but that's probably definitely one of the loosest things I've ever done in a four-wheel drive, especially being such a freshly built four-wheel drive with so many electronics in it too. It was quite a sense of achievement to get that thing across that river. For sure, mate. That was such a good feeling at camp. After everyone had gotten across safely, and one to remember for forever. I reckon that was truly epic. Now, of course, they are some of mine and Jesse's favourite moments from 2024, but I want to know what some of Sean and Graham's are, because they have had some epic adventures all over Australia and the US, and here are the ones that stood out to them.
Well, mate, there's no denying it that 2024 has been an elite year, an absolutely huge year. We've both been, done and seen some crazy things all over the place. I'm going to struggle to pick my highlights, but there are some that jump out at me. What about yourself, mate? What have you got that sort of sticks out in your mind for 24?
Wow. Firstly, without a doubt, the trip to the US was up there as one of the best I've ever done in a four-wheel drive with the Dirty 30, and probably the hardest track I've ever driven in my life, the Maze. in Sand
Yes.
Hollow.
Screw
Edge of my
that.
seat for the whole time, mate. That was, I'm just so stoked I'm alive at the end of 2024. It was that scary, but that cool. Very rewarding, mate.
Mate, I'm going to say the premiere for me this year would have to be the Kimberley trip. I love getting up to the Kimberley at any time, but to put it together with that crew and to do the Umbi again was, just next level, man. Just so good.
There was a couple of highlights from that trip. That was probably one of the best trips of the year for me too, man. Talk about fishing for a second. Best fish you've caught on camera in the show. For me, that barramundi I caught on that same Kimberley trip, mate, the 95 centimetre or whatever it was.
Ridiculous.
Down at the Drysdale. Was it the Drysdale or the Durack? I think it was the Durack.
Durack.
I caught that guy. He was a cracker, mate. Many casts went into that one, as you know.
Mate, I'm going to say there's two instances for me. First and foremost was catching a GT off at Sandy Cape. Just shouldn't have happened, to be fair, but it did. Very stoked with that. And then I got a really good barra right when I needed it in Pomperaw. Just happened at the right time. We were about to cook lunch and I just hooked into a good 70, 75 centimetre barra and fed everyone. It was just perfect timing.
Yeah, good's that. Even better when it happens in front of everyone, mate.
Exactly. It did, yeah. Both times it did. It was like, yeah, okay. Occasionally I can catch a fish. It was good.
And I'll go back to that same Kimberley trip because one of the wildest bush mechanic fixes I've probably done my whole life with you was the radiator. When the radiator went and sooty and we were like days and days out from being near civilization, I thought, this is me. Somehow sooty's going to live here for the rest of her days. But we managed to get it fixed and got the radiator done, which is no small feat.
I remember thinking we're going to have to take it in turns to drag you out. So, 10 Ks per car and just slowly drag you out of there. Then when we started cutting that radiator apart, I thought, this is it. There's
no
this is
coming
the end.
back.
There's no coming back from this. And it's probably still, you probably still could have kept it in the car to this day. It was that well fixed.
Well, that's the thing. We drove all the way back and, that thing just loved it. It loved it. And it worked such a treat. And you get lucky every now and again, mate, when it comes to bush mechanics. And that was one of those times. One of the most memorable campsites for me, mate, was in the Sierra Nevadas, right near the Rubicon Trail where we camped in the deep snow. Minus 10 degrees and thickest snow I've ever seen in my life. I thought I've seen some thick snow in Australia, but this was next level. Making a fire, having a little heat hut that we made up, and just camping, just the logistics of camping in such cold, extreme climates was just all new to me. Like, how's this right? Even grabbing a beer out of your fridge, they were colder when they were in my drawers. In the back in the trundle drawer of the Dirty 30. So, it shows you just how extreme that joint was.
I'll go the opposite end then. One of my most memorable camps from last year was in the middle of the Cape, like right in the centre of the Cape, and we actually made our own campsite on a billabong. And it was the opposite of what you're saying. Stinking freaking hot. There was no getting a beer out of the drawers in the back of your car. Let me say that. They had to come out of your fridge. But again, just that sensation of camping somewhere that maybe you almost shouldn't have been, if it makes sense.
I get it.
This is the wilderness, the absolute wilderness. So, that was a very, very memorable little encounter. Finally, for me, mate, there's one thing that I ticked off this year that I never thought would happen, and that was to be taken out to a traditional owner's land and allowed to try and spear barramundi. I've never done anything like it. I don't know if I ever will again. It felt sketchy as heck, but managed to get a feed, and I was shown a method of catching barra that you've got to see to be able to appreciate. It is so hard. And these guys just go out and do it on the reg. It's just not a problem for them. But to get this, and they made me my own spear, mate, which is fantastic. I carry it in the big old car behind me here, and
that's super cool. That's
one of these days I'll get one myself. But it was amazing, absolutely amazing.
One of the coolest experiences for me, mate, this year, and on the same sort of lines what you're talking about, was when I jumped in the water off the wild west coast of Tasmania in a little wetsuit that didn't quite fit me, and jumped in and tried to catch some abalone, and I was stunned by the amount of abalone I found, and had one of the best cook-ups on the beach that I've ever done. We had fresh crayfish, we had abalone, we had prawns, we had mate, it was a seafood smorgasbord for the ages. And like, to be able to do that at your campsite, and when you've been able to jump in the water and actually pull them out of those really cold waters of Tasmania,
doesn't get much better.
It makes you feel alive.
Well, mate, it's one of those years where I could talk forever about top moments. I think every time we jumped in the Forby, we had a top moment. So I'll leave it there. I know you've had a cracker, I've had a cracker too. Why don't we hand it back to Jock and Jesse, who I'm sure have got more to go.
What I'd like to know from you guys is, what was your favourite moment anything we've done, chuck it in the comments below. What's something that stood out to you as your favorite thing from our adventures over the last year? Let us know in the comments below. Well, mate, now is the time for my favorite part of the shed, because Beers in the Shed is not just about our adventures. It's of course about the adventures you guys get up to and sharing it with us and the four driving community, with some epic prizes to give away as well. We've got a good mix of fails, rigs, and a couple of awesome creations from some young future four drivers. So let's get into it, mate.
First up, we've got a big fail here from a fella called 93 Luxy on Instagram, and the poor Hilux has turned into a Rolex by the looks, unfortunately. That looks like it was a nice rig.
Oh, mate, that is a bit of a bummer. As they said, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, and unfortunately, rolling a Luxy is never a nice time, particularly because it's an extra cab as well. There wouldn't be too many clean ones of them driving around on the tracks, but hopefully everyone involved was okay, and the Luxy will live to fight another day. But it's that's a bummer. So a fail indeed. But 93 Luxy, I hope you got away out of it unscathed, and you're back on the tracks in no time. Maybe in a 94 Luxy, like the pony. Now, mate, we've got this epic creation that's been sent in by Lauren Vandermast from their 11-year-old Arden. This is the first four-wheel drive build, and it's so specific. It's a 1976 Nissan Patrol G60.
Yeah, the thing I like too, it's really going with the DIY segment of this episode, is he made that out of recycled cardboard, and he used his scissors and glue from school and glued that thing together. And it's a really well done replica. Even the lights on the front, the angle at the bottom of the radiator support, white roof, and the two windows in the back. Like, yeah, hats off to you, Arden. That is awesome. You didn't have to tell me what that car was. I knew straight away by looking at the front of it.
I'm pretty sure that's how Nissan actually designed the G60, the exact same way. So he's onto something, mate.
Yeah, it started with the old wooden wheel, and yeah. This next one here from Hobbs Holly, the fella's name is Jacob Doon. This is really cool. I've always said this would be a cool thing to do, to sass a modern dual car, pretty much like you have, Jock. He sassed the Colorado here. It's got coilovers in the front, a big diff. It's obviously a flipped house, and you get the pumpkin on the passenger side. What a weapon. You've got the best of both worlds. You've got a capable car, and you've got a new modern creature comforts on the inside.
Yeah, mate, that's pretty cool. You don't see too many Colorados getting around, so it's good to see that Jacobs put the time and effort into making this one a bit of a weapon. That's cool to see. I reckon that vehicle will be a force to be reckoned with on the tracks. Now, speaking of tracks, mate, this is an epic fail from Tristan Wardy. Now, not only has he sunk a mighty 80 Series Land Cruiser, it's also his boss's cruiser. And if I was the boss, mate, I would not be stoked with that. That is a fail. Tristan, mate, I hope your boss wasn't too upset at you after that. But it looks like they've got another 80 to tow him out, so I'm sure they got it out quick, smart, without too much drama. I'd imagine there probably was some water in the cab.
Yeah, how do you even explain that? I mean, like, you'd want to take your boss's car on a road trip somewhere there's some floods. There were some floods in Queensland the other day, and I'd just be like, sorry, mate, I left it in the car park and come back, it was flooded. I don't know if I'd have the courage to tell my boss I took his car forward drive and got it stuck in a bog hole. Far out. That's lucky it's an old car. That's all I've got to say. This is another awesome one from the kids. Johan Smith has sent this in, and it's their son Henry. And he's made a Red Lobster. This reminds me of when I was little. I had a little wooden truck with a pedal car my dad made for me. And he's four-wheel drive, and he's got it in mud. He looks like he might have a winch rope out the front around a tree. And he's just having a ton of fun. This is our next lot of four-wheel drivers coming through. And if they're starting doing this sort of wheeling, I tell you what, we're going to have our work cut out for us trying to keep up with these fellas, I reckon.
Yeah, mate, absolutely. It's good to see he's got the big Red Lobster out and about doing some mud bogging. You should take a leaf out of Jesse's book and roll it, because it looks like a nice example of a Red Lobster. You should give it to your mate so he can wreck it.
Maybe don't roll it. It doesn't have a roll cage. Build a bit of a roll cage out some timber and then roll it over. But that is so cool. Looks like he's having a ton of fun.
That's really cool. Speaking of awesome, this Triton with a DIY canopy, this is from Matt Black. Now, he, bit of a shout out here, mentioned that he lives in Naracoorte, which is where, of course, I painted the mighty Red Lux that's behind me, mate, down at Kappa Motor Bodies there a couple of months ago. Awesome bunch of blokes down there that I met and painted the vehicle with. But Matt lives in Naracoorte, and he's got a Triton that he's built up across the Simpson Desert with a budget DIY canopy he's built himself. So Matt, that is awesome, mate. Good to see you getting the Triton out there on a budget as well. And that canopy setup, even though it looks like a budget setup, mate, looks pretty epic. I would happily tour in the Simpson Desert, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't even know it was DIY until I looked at the photo. You can see where he's made the frame out of box section and everything. It's got an inverter, water tank, upright, like, that's awesome. That's
yeah, he's
so
made the
cool.
whole thing. Now, of course, mate, we've got a couple of winners to pick. We've got some 4X merch packs and we've got a snatch voucher for the young kids for their submissions as well, mate. I reckon for the fail, I'm going to have to pick Tristan Wardy to get a 4X merch pack, mate, because hopefully he kept his job after driving his boss's cruiser into the mud. And if he did, he'll be able to have a cold beer with his boss, maybe a cold 4X, and wear a bit of 4X merch. And if you didn't, well, you've got some 4X merch to as a consolation prize, mate. So, Tristan Wardy, you got a 4X merch pack coming your way. Maybe don't sink your boss's cruiser again next time.
It's a tough one here to pick one for the kids. Obviously, we're not going to give the kids any cans of 4X, so don't worry. We're going to give them a $50 snatch voucher, and make sure you spend that on yourself, fellas. Don't spend it on the parents. But I reckon I'm going to have to give that to young Ardent with his creativity of making this G60 Patrol replica out of some cardboard, glue, scissors, and he's painted it up, mate. That is such an unreal job, and I reckon you've definitely earned the $50 snatch voucher.
Awesome, mate, awesome. And of course, the final 4X merch pack for the rig, gonna have to give it to Matt Black, mate, because in the spirit of this episode of Beers in the Shed, by doing things yourself, having a crack, he has built an awesome canopy. Not only that, it's on a budget and he's got out there and used it across the Simpson Desert. So that is the spirit of DIY. And Matt, hope you enjoyed the 4X merch pack, mate.
That's all the prizes for this week, but don't forget to get in touch with us. We love to hear from you guys to see what you've been up to. The best way you can do it is subscribe and like all our content. So we've got social media, we've got Facebook, we've got Instagram, we've even got TikTok now. And don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell on YouTube. And if you want to get on the shed, make sure you hashtag 4Drive247 rigs, 4Drive247 fowls, and 4Drive247 kids, and you could be getting yourself some prizes. We do have a heap of cool stuff coming up on the channel. We've got the two old fellas that took their Y62 and the 200 over to Fraser Island. That's something you guys have been asking for many, many years. It's finally happened. And I don't want to spoil it here, but the Nissan probably won because Toyotas aren't that great. Another interesting video we've got coming up on the channel very soon is Wagon of the Year. Now, we take out some of the newest wagons on the market and test them, put them all head to head. And I tell you what, it was a ton of fun driving some of these things. I might have to upgrade one of my wagons maybe.
Yeah, mate, definitely. Maybe you could see what comes out on top and go from there. I have a feeling it might start with N and end with Nissan, but we'll have to wait and see. Jesse, mate, it has been a fantastic year. Thanks for all the fun that we've had together, wheeling around on the tracks, and here's to an epic 2025. And of course, a big thank you goes out to you guys as well for watching and supporting, liking and subscribing, commenting, everything that you do. It means a lot to us. From everyone here at 4Drive 24/7, we hope you've had an awesome Chrissy. You get in the shed and work on your 4Drive, or even better, you get out on the tracks and use it safely and have fun. Have a great New Year's, and Jesse, mate, I will see you in 2025 for some more epic wheeling, eh?
Sounds good, mate. Merry Christmas. Have a good one.
Cheers, mate.